Hello, hello, hello. A very warm welcome to all our friends, viewers, stakeholders, fans of Africa Rise with Susan West. It is a beautiful Sunday and happy new year. So, wherever you are joining us from, depending on your time zone, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I do hope that you had a wonderful Christmas celebration and your new year has begun very well. Mine, I cannot complain about. I do hope that what your resolutions are, that you haven't already started to, you know, uh, give up on it. Still too early. All right. So today I am super excited. It's our very first episode in 2022, and we are taking it from the angle that drug abuse, the effects of drug abuse on the continent of Africa. There is recently there have been a rise of young people getting involved in abusing illicit drugs, using illicit drugs, and the consequences that it has on the psyche of Africa and the consequences it has on the society at large. And of course, we will be taking Nigeria specifically as a case study because we have the media and advocacy personnel from the National Drug Agency Enforcement Agency of Nigeria, NDLEA, and also our second guest is Dr. Ojo, who is here to join us. But we have Dr. Femi Babafemi in the back studio, and without taking too much of your time, we will bring him on. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe to all our channels. And when you do subscribe to our YouTube channel, press the bell button, okay, so that you are alerted when we go live. So let's take it away. Happy Sunday, Mr. Femi Babafemi.
Thank you. Good evening, and thanks for having me on your program.
You're welcome. I'm so happy that you made out time from your busy schedule to join us. We are talking today about the drug abuse because recently we've started hearing about things that we never used to hear about, especially in Nigeria, as far as young people, taking drugs. All the way you can find evidence of videos of young people even in primary school abusing drugs, and of course the effect it would eventually have on the society at large is a major concern. And we don't have a lot of information as to hard drugs being used on the African continent. A few countries have had challenges with drug abuse. We've seen in the media, and countries like South Africa. But when it comes to Nigeria, it's beginning to sound like some kind of not so long ago it was an alien idea, but now it's become so prevalent that it's affecting every area of our society. So please go ahead, introduce yourself, a brief introduction, and what you do.
Very well. As you have rightly introduced me, my name is Femi Babafemi. I'm the Director of Media and Advocacy at the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency National Headquarters in Abuja. I'm talking of NDLEA. Principally, my job revolves around projecting the image of the NDLEA and also giving as much information to the people to educate the people about the work of the agency, about the programs and activities of the agency, and more importantly, about the dangers of sharing facts about drugs, drug abuse, and illicit drug trafficking.
Right. Thank you so much. So, in your experience, how would you describe the uprise or the upsurge of illicit drugs being available to the ordinary man on the streets? I mean, growing up, we know that one of the problems that we had at the time that we knew about, that was a common knowledge for everybody, was cannabis. But now we're hearing about strange drugs that go ahead and talk to us about the sort of drugs that you find in Nigeria and how they find themselves into Nigeria.
Yeah, basically, the problem of drug and drug abuse had always been there, and even in the 80s, what most people work with or understood then, because of the growing population of the country, most of the discussions around drug and drug abuse then were basically based on guesswork or projections until 2018, 2019, when the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, with the support of EU, European Union, supported the Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics to conduct a national drug survey on drug use and health. The results of that survey, actually conducted in 2017, 2018, and that was the first document that we have that gives us the grim picture of the drug problem in Nigeria. That was until then we have the exact number of people abusing drugs, the kind of drugs they abuse. And so based on the result of that survey, we understood that 14.3 million Nigerians were actually abusing drugs, which gives us a 14.4% prevalence rate, which is one of the highest in the world, which because at 14.4% prevalence rate, that would be about 3 times the global prevalence, the global average. So that gives us, that survey actually captured respondents between the ages of 15 and 64. And it's also from that survey that we understand that 1 out of 7 Nigerians actually abuse drugs. And 1 out of 5 of them is a woman. And also of this figure, we also understand that 1 out of 4 also suffers from drug use disorder. So that's, where you see, again, breaking it down to our active population, talking about the young adults, we discover that most of the abusers are between the ages of 25 and 39, who had actually started experimenting with drugs at the age of 19. But that was as at then, because as we speak today, based on reports from the field operations of the NDLA, we now understand or know again that even kids in primary school of 8, 9, 10 years also abuse drugs, just like you observed in your opening remarks. They abuse drugs now. You can see them, there are not things hidden anymore. You can see their videos online. They have been that reckless. And beyond all of this, we also know that the most abused of these drugs, I'll come down to some of the specifics, but now talking about the most abused of these drugs is cannabis, which is abused by about 11 million Nigerians. That is, again, huge. That makes us probably the number 1 in the world, which is not very, very soothing or comfortable. Now, beyond this, again, you also have quite a number of other drugs that are being abused, from pharmaceutical opioids to some club drugs. If you talk of club drugs like cocaine, heroin, rofinol, all of this, our people are abusing them now. Then when you come also to pharmaceutical opioids like tramadol, codeine, that is the cough syrup with codeine, all of this, again, that's phenol. Our people are also, now, because the good thing is this, there has been, after that, the result of that survey came out, I can tell you that Nigeria has actually taken a lead in the fight against illicit drug and abuse on the continent. And how do I mean? Back in 2018, President Muhammadu Buhari set up a Presidential Advisory Committee for the Elimination of Drug Abuse called PASEDA. And coincidentally, that body was then headed by the current chairmanship executive of the NDLA, General Mohammed Buba Marwa, retired. And they worked and produced a blueprint for the government of Nigeria. They worked with other stakeholders to produce a blueprint for the country. And that ultimately led to General Marwa's appointment in January last year, that's January 2021, to head the agency. And I can tell you that since then, it's never been a dull moment in the fight against illicit drugs and drug abuse, illicit drug trafficking and abuse in the country. I'll tell you again, let me give you a bit of the statistics so that you will also understand what has been done. Last year alone, I can tell you that more than 12,000 offenders were arrested. Of this figure, about 8,000 of them were cancelled and rehabilitated in the various facilities operated by the NDLA. Now we have about 1,500 also offenders sent to jail. While you have quite more than 3,000 cases ongoing in the courts as we speak. Again, in the area of mopping up the drugs from our streets, the agency that period, I mean, within that year, was able to mop up over 3.3 million kilograms of assorted illicit drugs worth over 120 billion naira. That again is also huge. So far, we've seen tremendous improvement in the effort to mop up illicit drugs wherever they are found in the country, and that's why you see again there have been attempts. For instance, you know that like I told you, one of the most abused drugs, I mean the most abused drugs, not actually one, the most abused drug is cannabis, because it is grown locally, and unfortunately for those in that business, the NDLA has been dealing them very serious blows, going into the farms, going into the forest to destroy the farmlands, I mean their plantations. So that is really affecting that business, and of recent we discovered that okay, the cartels are now moving to another West African, a neighboring country, to smuggle in this particular substance through the waterways. And unfortunately for them, they've also been having it tough with the NDLA there. So wrapping it up, all in all, I can tell you that, yeah, the problem is real. The problem is we have the picture of the problem, but then we are responding adequately.
Thank you. I just noticed that Dr. Ojo successfully joined us. Dr. Ojo works at the psychiatric hospital, I think, in Yaba, Lagos. But before I go on to him, I just want you to talk about, we already understand that in Africa, we have the capacity to grow marijuana or cannabis, whatever name you might call it. And this has been something that has been with us for a very long time, for as long as I remember being a child. But when it comes to the opioids, when it comes to cocaine, when it comes to methamphetamine and all these drugs, where do they come from? Who brings them into Nigeria?
Absolutely. Like again, I told you, like as you rightly observed, cannabis is what we produce. I mean, we grow here, we cultivate here, and I've also told you that we're really frustrating those involved in that process, because we're going far into the forest where they never believed we could get to destroy those farmlands. But then when you talk of these other, the opioids, quite a number of them come from South America, especially when you talk of cocaine, heroin, you are talking of Brazil, especially cocaine. That mostly comes from Brazil. Then you also have some from the Middle East, like recently, some months ago, I think around August last year, we intercepted a consignment of Captagon, which is an amphetamine imported from, I think, Lebanon, which is, called the terrorist drug. About 70, about more than 74 kilograms of that. That's over 500,000 pills of that particular dangerous drug were brought into the country, concealed in the machinery, in equipment, for the purpose with the insurgents in parts of the country as their destination. But unfortunately, through intelligence and the proactive work of the agents, were able to intercept that. Beyond that, you also have the problem of methamphetamine. Methamphetamine also used to come from that part of the world until when our own people also learned the process, the act of cooking and producing methamphetamine, and that's why you have a number of labs, which we call them clandestine laboratories in parts of the country. We have been shutting them down and mopping up some of their products anywhere we find them. Some of them have tried to smuggle, some of these things out of the country using Nigeria to export it to other parts of the country. We have also been blocking that at the airports, land borders, especially. If you follow some of our reports, you will be seeing that we've been blocking that up to, even today, I have released a statement on some of our effort. We also discover of late, again, like if you are able to lay your hands on the statement, we also released today that with all that we've been doing to frustrate the growth, the cultivation and production of cannabis in Nigeria, we're now discovering again that a number of these criminal elements are also trying to import this substance in some other forms, like drug cookies, drug chocolates, produced in other jurisdictions where these substances are allowed. For instance, the ones we intercepted at the weekend, we discovered that somebody shipped this all the way from Canada, drug chocolates produced in Canada and shipped through through a courier company, shipped them to Nigeria, and were able to carry out what we call controlled delivery, through which we're able to arrest the person involved, who unfortunately claims to be a security agent, but then, as we speak, is in our custody. That notwithstanding, is in our custody and is going to face the music. So you have all of that. Then of late, again, you also have cannabis attempts by some of the cartels to bring in cannabis from Ghana in through our waterways. We are also intercepting that and frustrating all their moves. Then you also have tramadol and others like codeine also being brought in from India. So you have all of this, yes, spread in some parts of the world. But then the good thing is, I can tell you that we are not allowing them to come into the country, except those the take through some, some forest border areas that have not been well covered. And
right.
even when they bring them to our streets, we don't allow them, we don't give them the breathing space to sell their evil merchants, merchandise.
Merchandise. Thank you. You know, I'm going to bring Dr. Ojo in from what you mentioned about making sure that they don't bring these things in. Dr. Ojo will be in a better position to answer my next question, which is what the effect has been for all the ones that found themselves their way into the country, and the consumption and the age range of people who consume these substances, and the impact it's having on the society at large. So I will just bring Dr. Ojo in quickly. Good afternoon, Dr. Ojo.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Good evening, more like. Yes, I can hear you.
Good evening.
You're a bit dark, but I can see your smile is coming through. your lighting isn't so good, but we'll just go on with the conversation. If you could just do a brief introduction of yourself, Dr. Ojo, we'll appreciate it.
My name is Dr. Ojo Abayomi Moses. I am the consultant in charge of units at Yaba Hospital. I've been in charge of treatment of drug patients, like we call them, for a while, maybe about a decade and some years. And having been a resident doctor in the same hospital, I've seen a lot of drug patients even while I was in unit. So I can speak a bit about the characteristics of this, the patterns of use, their demographics, and the rest. But let me just say something, because when I came in, I met the NDLA talking about the issue of supply reduction, basically. And I just wanted to say that supply reduction is just a part or a section of what we need to do, and there should be a kind of coordination between different agencies. One of the problems that we have in Nigeria is that we have different agencies, NGOs, hospitals, faith-based organizations doing a lot to stop this menace, because people see it from different angles. The NDLA see it from criminal angle. These people are criminals. They are bringing in drug. They are trafficking in drugs, and they need to be checked. The faith-based organizations are looking at it as something that destroys the family, destroys the homes, destroys individuals. The hospitals are looking at it as something that causes mental illness, and the NGOs are looking at it as something that they can use to improve the life of people who have been trapped in this. So we are looking at it from different angles, but all these angles are kind of they are tenable, if I may use that word. You can look at drug abuse to give you different angles in terms of negative impact on the individual, the family, the society, and a nation at large. Now, talking about their pattern, most times the people we get, because of our limitations in terms of we have a child adolescent center. So anybody below 19 years old who has drug problem is taken to that child adolescent center. That also deals with other mental illness that occur in children. But the one that we get are the adults, anyone above 19 years old who has been into drugs, or who has drug abuse problems, ones that we treat in my center. And what we have found is that in recent times, we found that even old people who are elderly, who are old, we tend to see them. We thought that by age of 50, people will have stopped the use of drugs. But we now see people who started early life, and they continue even to old age.
Yeah, just really quickly, I know that you say that your department handles people from the age of 19 upwards, but from the information you might have, what is the age range, the youngest people that you find you've had to deal with in the departments that take care of children that have come in because of drug abuse?
Yes, drug use is different from drug abuse, and drug abuse is different from drug dependence. And there could be many problems that could happen if somebody has been indulging in drug abuse. Now, people can start using drugs as early as age of 8, 9, 10, but they may not develop any problem at that point. It's when they develop problem, that is when they come to us. But we want to talk about this now, talk about age of onset of drug use. We've seen in some research work that we've done, we've seen people who have started as early as age of 8, 10. It depends on what you also call drug, because some people don't think that alcohol is drug. Some people don't think that tobacco is drug. But these are what is called gateway drugs. These are what starts before they go to all these more dangerous drugs.
Yeah.
So the people that we see, usually the one that I can remember, maybe age of 16, when they develop problems and they have to seek medical attention.
Right. I'm just going to take a short read and then I'm going to go back to Mr. Femi Babafemi. The reason I want to take this read is because, of course, the NDLEA, like you mentioned, look at the drug problem from the criminal angle, like is it criminal activity and a criminal offense. And the world is now a global village where we know what happens in other parts of the world, regardless of whether we are in a village somewhere in Africa. So I have some comments here, especially the one sent in by Obi-Man. And I know Obi-Man is an American. He did mention, said, I'm sorry to hear that you are all beginning to experience what we have been dealing with here in the US for years. The use of illicit drugs by people has had a devastating impact on the society. The reason I come to this, Mr. Femi, is the fact that what in your experience and information you have with the high rate of crimes and banditry and terrorism in Nigeria, how much of these activities would you attribute to the effect of hard drug use?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me quickly correct an impression before I respond to your question. Absolutely, the NDLEA is the lead agency in the area of drug supply reduction, but beyond that, we're also involved in drug demand reduction. And the statistics I gave out in the course of my explanations explain that. That is the fact that beyond seeing the problem of drug abuse as the problem of drugs generally as a criminal issue, we also understand and we appreciate the fact that it's also a health issue. And that's why it's not everybody we arrest that will take as criminals, that will take to court, that will prosecute. No. Like I told you, I said last year alone, we counseled and rehabilitated over 8,000 offenders. That's it's a fair balance between our drug supply and our drug demand reduction efforts. Having said that, I also want to also clear the area of coordination that Dr. Ojo mentioned. Just towards the end of last year, the federal government, through the NDLEA, launched what we call National Drug Control Master Plan 2021 to 2025, which is a document that provides a holistic approach to the issue of drug problem in Nigeria. It actually gives, works with 4 pillars, giving responsibilities to different stakeholders who are involved in the process of solving this problem. Now, having said that, to your question, I'll say that yes, there is a strong nexus between the problem of drug abuse and the rate of criminalities we have in parts of the country. Whether you talk of insurgency in the northeast, you talk of banditry in the northwest, you talk of kidnapping for ransom in the north central or in the southwest, or even the new developments in the Southeast, all of these have at their basis the problem of drug abuse, because nobody in his right senses will go out to invade or storm a school dormitory in the midnight to kidnap 300 persons.
Your sound has cut out. Mr. Femi, we can't hear you anymore. Your audio is out. You're muted. Maybe you want to check your device. You're muted now. We can't hear you. Welcome, Synovia Ridley. We missed you greatly. Yes. All right. Dr. Ojo, you can just carry on from where he stopped so that he can sort his sound problem out.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. As long as people, I liken the issue of drug abuse to COVID-19. As long as people move around, as long as the world has become a global village, drugs will always move. I met the NDLA talking about the fact that we grow cannabis. That is what people brought from overseas after the World War II. They brought cannabis back to Africa, and then people started growing it. Cannabis, is not native to Africa. People brought it from abroad. And all these other plants, all these other drugs, when people travel, in the early 80s, people that traveled out of Nigeria in the 70s and the 60s, they came back and they brought cocaine and heroin. And now, recently in the East, in Southeast, we have something they call Nkuru Miri, which is ice, or the one we call amphetamine. And it was said that somebody brought it from abroad into the region. So as long as people move around, drugs will always move around. And again, when we imbibe the way of life of the Europeans, the Western world, then we are also going to get the other side of it. Talking about non-communicable diseases, they are called lifestyle diseases. Substance abuse is a non-communicable disease, and it is the lifestyle that determines whether you have it or not. Once you imbibe the lifestyle of people who have that disease, definitely you also have it. So when we say that people want to smoke tobacco, they want to take cannabis. So people are even talking about legalizing cannabis, even in some parts of Africa. And this came up because countries all over the world have done it to be like, nations in Africa want those countries of the world, like Canada, like America, like all those other countries. So as long as the world remains a global village, we will continue to circulate drugs among ourselves. And one drug that has been taken in a place will always find its way to other places, as long as people are moving around.
Right. So I'll just allow Mr. Kelly.
The person that asked the question that what they are experiencing in America that we are also experiencing.
Okay, Mr. Femi, can you continue from where you were before your audio cut out?
Thank you. Sorry for the disruption there. Now, I was trying to explain that based on our experience and reports from our field operations, I can tell you that definitely there is a strong nexus between the problem of drug abuse in the country and the criminalities we're having in parts of the country today. And that, again, from our interactions with our security forces in the theater of battle in parts of the country, we understand and we know quite well that in some cases, or in most cases, when they clear areas occupied by terrorists or bandits, at the end of the day, they find remnants of drugs that have been used, or that are still parked yet to be used, meaning that they have been doing the kind of things they were doing under the influence of these drugs. Then beyond that, we have also seen cases where some of these people, when they are taken into custody, after 2-3 days, they start to react. That is showing some withdrawal syndrome symptoms, because they have no drugs to pump into their system again. And again, in some of our own interdiction efforts, we have arrested a number of bandits and people who supply drugs to the insurgents, and that's also another confirmation of the fact that these people act under the influence of drugs. So what our own belief is that if we're able to take out the equation, the drug equation, we'll probably have solved the problem of insecurity or the criminalities we are facing in parts of the country by about 50 to 60%. And this is what this is the consensus within the security architecture, or the security community, law enforcement community in the country. We believe strongly that people will not act in their normal senses, will not do the kind of things we are seeing when they're in the normal senses. They are definitely acting under the influence of mind-altering substances.
Yeah, and that brings me to asking that as a government agency person, you will have more information on whatever collaborations you're having with other countries, because, for instance, when we watch on documentaries about drug abuse in South Africa and the places that are so violent because of the heavy drug use in those areas, now, in your work, have you been in collaboration with other African nations? And when Obi-Man made mention to Nigeria beginning to experience what they've been experiencing in Africa, I could not help but imagine the fact that we have seen documentaries, we have seen videos of how drugs can be weaponized to destroy a society, where people sit down to plan, governments or powers that be somewhere sit down to plan and say, if we cannot get them down like this is the way to do it. What would you say to that?
Absolutely. I tell you that the work we do in NDLA is intelligence-based, absolutely intelligence-based. And if what we do is based on intelligence, meaning we cannot do it all alone, we have to work with others, whether within the country or outside the country. And it's on that note, I will also tell you that, yes, we work with partners across the world, whether in Europe, whether in America or Asia, or even in Africa here. We have quite a number of working relationships. We share intelligence. We have support from the DAE in America. We have from Border Force in the UK. We have with the Saudis. We have working relationships with, even of recent, we signed some MOUs with our partners in the Gambia, as well as we're working on the same thing with our partners in Saudi Arabia. And so all over the world, we work with a number of other security agencies, other governments, because this problem is a global challenge, and Nigeria is not isolated from it. So we all have to share experience. We all have to, unfortunately for us, especially with the renewed war against drug abuse and illicit drug trafficking, beginning January last year, we've had enormous support coming from our foreign and international partners, like the UK government, the French, the German, the US government, Saudis, quite all over the world. We've had quite people providing training, providing logistics, providing equipment, and
right.
More importantly, sharing intelligence, because intelligence is key we work with intelligence and technology, and that is why somebody would have to leave Brazil with a ship loaded with cocaine, and we are not there at the point of departure or at the point of loading those things, but we know and we follow up, we monitor all that happen, all the movement of the ship, all the way up till they get into our own waters here, and we swoop on them. So that shows you that we can't, we're not working alone, we work in partnership with others. And that's why, like I told you, we've been able to seize more than 3.3 million kilograms of assorted illicit drugs in just 1 year alone. That is huge. With more than 12,000 arrests, that is also huge. So that shows that something is working well.
If it shows that something is working well, it's going to get me back to Dr. Ojo. With all these things that the government say they are doing on paper and, of course, in action, what difference has it made in your experience working with the victims of drug use or drug abuse? Dr. Ojo?
Well, what we have seen, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, is an upsurge in the number of people who are into drug use, who are into drug abuse, and who are into drug dependence, or people who have even developed psychosis as a result of drug use. Especially with COVID, with economic problems that COVID also brought, the issue of abuse has increased. And we used to have a 60-bed facility for only drug patients in my hospital. Now, about 2/3 of the hospital is filled with drug patients. And that is about 200 beds at the Yaba Center alone. So from 60 beds to about 2/3 of 200, you can see that there's an increase. And sometimes we have to put many people on waiting lists. There's no bed space. So what we have seen is an increase. And that tells us that the people that have been arrested by any of the people who are into business of drugs, some of them may use, they may not use, but they are into trafficking. The people that are affected are the people that actually use these drugs. And many of them are not into trafficking. In fact, many drug users are not regular users. They just use occasionally. And that is why the NODC report shows that about 14.3% of Nigerians between the age of 15 and 65, they use drugs in 2017. And that is huge, because if you look at our population, it's about 200 million. 14.3% will be about, of that population, it's about 14.4 million people. So when you look at the percentage, you may think that maybe it is small. But when you now look at the population involved, you see that this is huge. And we are seeing people dropping out of schools, people losing their jobs because of drug issues. Domestic violence has increased. Rape cases have increased. Crimes have increased because many of them are traced to this to use of drugs. And every day, just like we have different variants of COVID-19 coming every time, we have different types of drugs coming. People use different combination of drugs. Even the one that has not been listed by NDLA as illicit, people are already using them to get the euphoric effect. So as long as people need something to make them to have euphoria, they always go the whole length to, NDLA will not chase somebody who is using inhalants, for example, volatile substances. They may not focus on them. NDLA may not focus on somebody who is using benzodiazepines like Rohypnol and alcohol, which are very dangerous drugs. So the problem still remains, as even though NDLA has done a lot, particularly in recent times, they've really gone after these drug barons, but they have only focused on people who are selling for profit. People who are using, there are still many, and they are getting into trouble.
Yeah.
Mr. Femi, you can react to what he said.
Okay, yeah, I so much agree with Dr. Ojo there. There are quite a number of factors responsible for the prevalence. Like he mentioned, when you have 14.4% prevalence rate, that is high. That's about 3 times the global average, which is huge. But then in our own environment here, we can see quite a number of factors are responsible for this. Like he mentioned, the problem of COVID. You can see a surge after the COVID. Even in trafficking, you also see a surge, because for about 2 years, the traffickers were on, because the borders, the international borders were shut down, so they couldn't move. And so with the gradual reopening of the borders, they became so desperate to move their wares across the world. So you can see that, right? The same thing, one of the major impacts of COVID on the health of the people, especially in the area of drug abuse. You see quite a number of people that were locked down, and so they depended largely on some of these substances. A number of them faced a lot of challenges, and they felt that their exit, or the only way to relieve tension, is to go in for some of these substances. But beyond this, again, we also have to understand that there is also the poor parenting, which is a factor that is starting from the home now, because you see quite a number of parents also they do this, and when they do this, especially in the presence of their kids, there is a tendency for those kids to also imbibe this subculture. For instance, some of them send their kids to buy them alcohol, to buy them tramadol, to buy them even weed. I mean, that is marijuana. Now they take these things in the presence of the children. The children are looking at them. One day, the kids would say, okay, there must be something fantastic about this thing that our parents are sending us to buy. So they want to experiment, and from experimenting, they get the high. And when they get the high, they believe that they enjoy the euphoria. And so gradually, they get dependent. Now, beyond poor parenting, you also have a number of social factors, like the social media. You have quite a number of our celebrities who display this thing, who mislead quite a number of their followers through some of their actions. And so these people, they don't really understand the effects of these things on their health, on their well-being, on their future. So they also want to behave, they want to do the things their so-called role models are doing. So they get carried away by doing the things they see their celebrity models do. Beyond the social media influence, again, you also have the problem of the dark web. The dark web, that is where people, especially with the lockdown, with the COVID lockdown, you see quite a number of businesses moved online. So the same thing with the drug business. They also moved online. You see them now. You now have people going to the dark web to advertise drugs, and people also going there to buy drugs, and these things are delivered to them anonymously. They pay anonymously, and these things are delivered to them anonymously. It was until last year that we were able to bust the first syndicate in Abuja, where they were using these things, and thereafter you even find unfortunately you find even the educated. For instance, the lady we arrested in Edo last year is a medical doctor involved in using illicit substances to produce cookies and what do you call it, brownies.
Wow, very disappointing.
Yeah. So I mean, that's somebody that should know the effects of this thing. So the influence, the impact of the dark web and the social media quite enormous on this thing. So then the issue of poverty. We can't run away from that. And that's why, like I tell people, this whole thing, we ought to, I think I had Dr. Ojo refer to that, we ought to, it's something that we ought to tackle holistically. For instance, if we are arresting the marshals of death, we are trying to cancel a number of these people. Now, the problem of addiction, you see quite a number of these people going back even after treatment. You will see quite a number of them who have gone in and out of rehab centers 5-6 times, young people, because when they come out, the factors that push them into it are still there. Some of them have no jobs to do. So definitely that is why we also try to work with a number of state governments in all our visits, in all our advocacy visits. These are the things we discuss with state governments, we discuss with local governments on the need to provide some, on the need to provide jobs and empowerment, because even when somebody is rehabilitated and there is no post-rehabilitation engagement, there is a tendency that they will go back into drug, into drug addiction. So
if somebody has,
yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, they say he who is down fears no fall. If there's nothing else in life to live for, and you look for the only thing that gives you some kind of escape, which in this case would be drug for some people. So just as we round up, I'm just going to let Dr. Ojo go first. Dr. Ojo, as someone who works with people, the people who these substances affect, I just want you to take a minute or two, talk to the public, talk to them, let them understand how the little indulgences that they think is nothing end up putting them in a position where they are heavily reliant on those drugs, where they become addicted, and what this can mean for them as individuals and for their families and the society at large.
Well, drug use is a disease, and if you understand that it's a disease, then we will not put all the blames on the person that is involved. It's just like having malaria, and people are blaming you that why should you have malaria?
Have malaria.
So that's the way I would look at it, and I will look at it from the point of view of health facilities in African countries, particularly Nigeria. In the US, if you are into drugs, you have rehabilitation, you have facility to take care of your treatment. In Nigeria, it is expensive to go into rehabilitation because it's out of pocket. If your family don't have the money, you don't get rehabilitated. And that is where I will appeal to government to do more. Government has done a lot. I will give that to Nigerian government, particularly in the area of treatment of mental illness, including drug abuse. But a lot still needs to be done because there's a lot of burden on the family. To the extent that family give up easily. The second point is that drug abuse is a chronic problem. It's a chronic recurring problem. So if somebody is treated, it is not going to be a crime for that person to relapse. Relapse is just is not out of the question for most of them, because the condition that brought them into drug abuse in the first place are still there. Yeah. So we cannot blame somebody that a person relapses, but the facility must be there, the family must be supported, and the patient must be treated for as many times as they need treatment, because we know that treatment works. It works. It may not be in terms of, the person will not go back to drug entirely, but it improves their life. They can hold employment. They can go back to school and finish up their school. They can, acquire some skills. Definitely, treatment works, but we need to support family to do this, because in Africa, particularly in Nigeria, treatment is out of pocket, and that is not going to work for a chronic illness like substance dependence.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ojo. Let me get Mr. Femi Babafemi to give his final thoughts. And I'll just quickly take this read to allow Mr. Femi give his remarks, which is Synovia Ridley said, drugs intentionally brought into the African American communities in the 80s and 90s destroyed so many families. And now the drugs are hitting the white communities as well, just as hard. What goes around comes around. And I also, I just want you to take this, take your remark, but also be aware of some of the things that we as ordinary people suspect that it could have been weaponized by other people to bring us down, but we are not, as a government, maybe the government is not looking at it that way yet. So just as you give your final remarks, when he, Mr. Femi, Dr. Ojo mentioned about not having enough support, because when they get patients whose family have to pay out of pocket, it's very expensive. The government need to do more. So you can go ahead with these thoughts in mind and give your final remark.
I'll tell you the same line. In line, I'll go to the specific of the issue of treatment mentioned by Dr. Ojo there, because we are the front line, so we know that treating addiction, which we all agree is an ailment, just like any other ailment. So, and that's why we've been campaigning against stigmatization. We don't want anybody stigmatized. A lot of these people are victims, and so we need to show them love. We need to support them to get treatment, because nobody gets malaria and is in hiding. No. So the same thing with addiction. You can't be suffering from addiction, which is an ailment, and being in hiding because of the fear of stigmatization. Again, quite a number of families cannot afford this, because I tell you, in Abuja, where I operate from, an average private hospital will take, a standard private hospital will take an average of, that's a rehab center now, will take an average of 1 million per month for treatment. How many families can afford that? And that's my next thought, my next advice springs from that. And that is to our youths, to those who are taking these substances. We're telling them, we're pleading with them, we're begging them that coming out of addiction is not a walk in the park. So it's better you don't even go into it at all. It's better you don't. We discovered that quite a number of people go into these things because they don't realize the danger of it. They don't realize the impact of this on their health, on their family, and the society as a whole. Because you see, quite we have interactions with quite a number of these people, young, promising young people, and that gets their future, their ambition, their expectation, aspiration in life destroyed because of the problem of drug abuse. And so the best treatment is prevention. And so that is why we're calling on our people. We're mobilizing all the stakeholders to preach the message of prevention. Let's talk to our people. Let's share facts about the dangers inherent in drugs, so that our young minds, our young adults, our people can understand, so that they will have to flee, run away from the recent, the research shows that about 40%, the number of those who see these drugs as dangerous have dropped even by about 40%. We don't need that. We need people to understand that these things are dangerous. They are dangerous to their health, and they need to walk away from it. So that's why our message, our number one message is people should avoid taking illicit substances. They should run away from it. Don't do it at all. There is nothing like, let me just start. If I start, let me just take experiments, because from the experimenting, you may never recover from it. Like I said, it's not a walk. Yeah, it's not a walk in the park at all. So
Mr. Femi, just before you go, that was supposed to be your final, your thoughts before you go. But there is a comment that I must take. It's from WSR1 TV, who says Nigerians make up at least 50% of inmates with drugs-related offenses across the world. What's wrong with Nigeria Border Agency? Are we really serious about war on drugs in Nigeria? Is that true?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. 50%. I don't know where the person got that particular data or information from, but I don't. Yeah, we know that there are issues, but if you see most now, I can tell you of recent that there is no. But it's extremely difficult for people now to traffic drugs through our border, whether to take it out or to bring it. I mean, with the statistics I've shown you, you will know. I mean, we pick them every time. It's whether they go through the land borders, they go through the air, or through the sea. We don't allow anything to come in or to go out. That's extremely difficult. Maybe in some cases, some of these things are trafficked outside of our own jurisdiction. That has nothing to do with us. Like you can see, most of those things come through Brazil, Addis Ababa, that's Ethiopia, even in the attempt to bring them into the country, yet we still don't allow them. So that's absolutely beyond our own control. And even though we are working in partnership with a number of these foreign jurisdictions to also make sure that everybody does its own bit, that I can assure you.
Oh. Well, I just want to say a very big thank you, Mr. Femi Babafemi. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I know you're very busy, but you made sure that you made it, because it's very important that you came here to, do justice to the topic. Thank you so very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Mr. Femi Babafemi of the NDLEA and Dr. Ojo from the Psychiatric Hospital in Yaba, Lagos, who have come to talk to us about the prevailing realities of drugs on the Nigerian society. However, I did wish that I had someone who would have taken it from a different angle to do a little bit of more of what I would call what the ordinary people, what us as Africans think is already happening, which is that it is an attack by some powerful people to make sure that if everything else has been tried to make sure that we fail and it didn't work, this will be the next best thing. How do you explain to me how we began to carry guns to kill ourselves, to abduct ourselves, to kidnap even family members for monies if we are not on drugs, And so I just want to say a very big thank you to everyone who joined us today on today's broadcast. This is our first broadcast for the year 2022. And as usual, we will continue going forward every weekend. We will come up here to discuss different topics with different guests from around the world. And of course, we will also be posting our videos that help us educate and disabuse our minds as Africans, whether it be politics, religion, or cultural. I've had a fantastic day, and I do hope that you have as well. Synovia, I did miss you. I was in search of you all over the internet. Welcome. And so, yes, thank you so very much. Like, follow, subscribe. Subscribe. How many times do we have to say it? It's just a button. Don't be stingy with it. Subscribe, follow, like, and share our videos. Thank you so very much. And I'll see you next weekend, God willing. Have a good day, a good week. Bye-bye.